So the last speaker for this session, but by no means the least important, a wonderful patient advocate, a friend of mine, Cynthia Mitchell. She is a patient partner from Winnipeg and fully involved in C3 as well as Cancer Care Manitoba. Cynthia's a wife, mother, teacher, mentor, advocate, and lives with cholangiocarcinoma. And through her partnership with various cancer-based initiatives, she not only raises awareness of cholangiocarcinoma, but also fosters community support and connection among patients and families in Manitoba and beyond. Thank you very much for that.
Well, I guess I'll start by saying that as a person who has spent the greater part of the last 20 years in a classroom with 5-year-olds, I am feeling very uncomfortable. But as a teacher and a mom and a mentor, I have a very firm belief in getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so today, in front of all of you, many for whom I have great respect, I am going to get comfortable being uncomfortable and share my story with cholangiocarcinoma. And in doing so, I hope to grow in my own discomfort and find strength in my vulnerability, and mostly to celebrate the power of shared experience. So in the summer of 2021, what started out as a large mass on my liver, started out as persistent heartburn. That would have been easier if it started out very clearly a mass on my liver, but it started off as persistent heartburn. And it eventually led to the discovery of a large mass on my liver. And at that point, it was a diagnosis of cancer of an unknown primary. We spent the next 3.5 months doing tests, scans. I met with specialists. And eventually, in December of 2021, 3 days before Christmas, in the thick of COVID, my surgeon called and told me that it was in fact cholangiocarcinoma, but that I was a candidate for resection. So I had to isolate, my family had to isolate, so that I could be well enough for my surgery. And about 20 days later, my husband drove me up to the hospital and couldn't even come in and said goodbye to me, told me he loved me. And I mean, we sure hoped we saw each other again, but we didn't know. And I walked into those doors and I've never felt more scared in my life, but I've also never felt as brave. And I think it really laid the foundation for how I navigated the rest of my journey. Thankfully, I had a successful resection. I had clear margins, no lymph node involvement. We celebrated, and I started adjuvant chemotherapy a few months later. My children remained at home. They did not go to school because we were worried about how immune compromised I was, given that COVID was still significant at the time. By the spring, the kids went back to school. I was feeling well, but I did start to have a sense that things were changing. And by the summer of 2022, a recurrence was confirmed. I had multiple lesions on my liver. I was told to go home, enjoy my family, and what little time I likely had left. I was offered some palliative chemotherapy and very little hope. And if you know me, I'm super hopeful. And that wasn't really my vibe. I remember sitting down with my doctor who turned out to, we had a great relationship. She's since retired, but I said, this is just really how I roll. I can't imagine just going home and just giving up and waiting to die. And luckily at the time too, I had already sort of immersed myself into the cholangiocarcinoma landscape. I had started to connect with others through the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation in the US. I had joined a Facebook group of patients, an international group, and I knew a little bit more. And I knew that maybe it just wasn't something that we did yet where I lived or with this doctor. That maybe there's hope, that maybe there's something that we can do that we just aren't doing yet. And maybe there isn't, but we don't know unless we try. And I think at that moment is when she really bought into, which really worked out for us. At that time also, I had seen Dr. Knox's name come across so many different platforms, and I knew that I had to connect with her, which we did. And again, my oncologist in Winnipeg was very eager to connect with someone with Dr. Knox's experience and expertise. And I also knew that molecular testing was critical. And so while we waited for the results of the molecular testing, we started gemcitabine and cisplatin. At the time, durvalumab was not approved. So after several insurance denials, we did secure access through a compassionate program in Manitoba. Unfortunately, I had continued progression. When the results from the molecular testing finally came in, we found out that I had an NTRK1 fusion, which at the time I had no clue what that meant, but everyone was excited that knew what that meant. So that gave me hope. And then when I looked into it further, I realized that there were few, but there were folks that would have potential complete responses to a drug called larotrectinib. Now, it wasn't funded. So again, at our second round now of advocating for access to a drug so that we didn't have to have that cost, we did. We advocated when we received coverage. And thankfully, Manitoba, once again, was supportive in securing access to larotrectinib through another compassionate care access program. Unfortunately, I did not respond to larotrectinib. And at that point, we decided to travel down to MD Anderson in Houston to see Dr. Javle, who recommended that we retest the original sample, but that we also have a new biopsy, both liquid and tissue. And while we waited for those results, I switched to a second targeted therapy for the NTRK1 fusion, entrectinib. Now that drug nearly did me in, significant weight gain, hospital stays, heart issues with my heart. And just in time, the molecular testing came back, and I had this biomarker of ERRFI1 or ERFFI1. I don't even remember. And nobody really knew that it was of any value. But Dr. Javle and Dr. Knox had conversations, and somehow we were told that there was this drug, erlotinib, for an EGFR fusion, common in lung cancer, that's all I know, and that I might respond to that drug. And so once again, we went through the cycle of advocating for access to that drug. This time it was very laborious. It took us over 3 months to get access to that drug. I just simply was not willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars every week. And I did not want to start doing that because I felt that if I started, then what was the motivation for anyone to stop or to start paying for it for me? We went through patient advocates through the hospital. I wrote letters. I spoke to media. And within 3.5 months, we were approved for that drug. And this part of it is my favorite part of the story because 5 weeks after starting that drug, when all hope was lost, at that point, my disease had progressed significantly. I had innumerable tumors on my liver. The walls were closing in, like I could feel it. And I went for my scan, just hoping, for something. And I got a call the next day that there had been a remarkable response to the drug, that many of my tumors were gone within 5 weeks, that the ones that remained were much smaller. And, so I like to say, I think I'm like the perfect trifecta of patient advocacy, collaborative healthcare professionals, and precision oncology, precision medicine, patient-centered care. This is what happens when those 3 things come into play. I mean, there are other pieces too, but those are 3 really impactful pieces. Today, I remain on the targeted therapy. I have regular scans. And, we know at certain points we will have to pivot. But I feel like now that we've accomplished this, I really feel like anything is possible. I mean, I'm ready for the next step, whatever it might be. I think it is really important to acknowledge that I think I've expressed this, but how difficult this journey is for patients and caregivers. When I was first diagnosed, as you can imagine, like overwhelming sense of fear. Rare cancer, aggressive cancer, just cancer, right? Am I going to die? Am I going to leave my children? And then that fear sort of evolves into feeling isolated because you're alone. I knew what a bile duct was, but I didn't know what a bile duct was. So I certainly didn't know what bile duct cancer was. And I'd never met anyone with bile duct cancer. And then there was no local community. I was by myself. And so I felt so alone and so lost. And then, you cycle through the frustration that comes with a complex cancer in a landscape like the Canadian landscape, especially at that time, where limited access to second opinions, specialists, novel therapies, clinical trials, absence of local community. But one thing that's really beautiful that blossoms out of all of those feelings, just like when you typically grieve through anything, is this time where you have a complete and total sense of resolve. And that resolve was a commitment to pursuing endless options and opinions, to never giving up, to acknowledging that this is going to be difficult and we are going to have to ruffle some feathers, but that we are going to fight. And as much as I hated that word, all along I've hated that word, but it really is a battle. It doesn't have to be seen as a negative thing. It really is you battling probably the most difficult thing that you will ever battle in your life. So early on, need a moment to gather myself. Now, finding resolve didn't come just from the frustration, but it also came from this desire to live fully. When I got the call that I'd had a recurrence, it was the summer of 2022. I was at the lake with my family, and I got a phone call letting me know that my disease had in fact recurred. And I went into my bedroom because I didn't want my children to see me. And it completely fell apart. And I cried. Oh, I cried. I've never cried like that before. It just wasn't fair. I was 41. I had only been married for 10 brief years to the most amazing man. I had 2 beautiful children. Like, what did I do? How did I deserve this? And it just simply wasn't fair. And after a while, my husband came in the room, and no one ever meets Drew. He's real, I promise. I talk about him all the time. He's a really great behind the scenes kind of guy. But he walked in the room and he sat down beside me. And he's always had this calmness to him. I'm clearly the feeler in the family, and he's the real level-headed one. But he sat down beside me and he said, it's not okay, but we're going to be okay. And thank you. And, we cried together. We talked about how sad we were, how disappointed we were, how scared we were. And then we looked at each other and we said, we're going to be okay. And we made a decision in that moment to love fiercely, to choose joy, and to never lose hope. That we were together in this as a team, and that would never change, and that we were going to live fully. And so there were some small acts. One of them was that my children and I would go for quite a lot of walks. We would walk and we would find little hearts around the neighborhood. Sometimes it was a leaf on the ground, or maybe it was a cloud in the sky, or it might have been a rock on the beach. And I started telling my kids, this is a reminder that we're surrounded by love. And in the back of my mind, I also knew that in my absence, that whenever they saw a heart, they would think of me. And they would know that they were loved. But what's really beautiful that grew out of it is that people from all around started sending us found hearts. There's people from all over the world sending us found hearts now. You'll see my contact information later. Please send me some found hearts. And we started to make reels with them. So we have on my Instagram account, we make a reel. We share it quite often. My kids are involved in the process. And it's just this project where we find hearts and we feel loved. Because not only are we recognizing that love surrounds us, but we feel so much love from our village now as a result. The kids asked me recently if we could publish a photo book. So that's our next project. So I also meet a good publisher, if anyone knows of one. Next, one of the second pieces for us is choosing joy. We are so blessed to have lived such a joyful life. But this has been such a good lesson in gratitude and perspective. Since my diagnosis, we have special dates. We go on more trips. I take many more pictures. We have confetti, and all of life's moments we celebrate with confetti. There's always confetti in our house. I think what we've learned is that joy, like big joy, really happens in the small moments. And actually that they're not really small moments. Those moments that we think are the small moments throughout our whole lives when everything's going well, those are actually the really big moments. And the sooner that we learn that, I think the greater joy we find in our lives. And then hope. Drew and I, my elusive husband, I think we accept this diagnosis, but we reject the prognosis. That's sort of been our motto from day one too. And it doesn't mean accepting doesn't mean giving in. It means leaning in. And when I was a little girl, my mother would always say, she never takes no for any answer. And I think that's really paying off now. So much like when I was 5 and I, wanted that Barbie and they said no, and then I would just rebelliously hope that it would happen. That's kind of what's happening now. It is this rebellious, radical hope. And I go back to this time and time again, and Rebecca, I think that's what connected me so quickly to Rebecca in the first place, is this power of yet. I've used it in my classroom for years. Just because we don't do something today doesn't mean we won't do it tomorrow, and it doesn't mean we can't do it. And so I think for me personally, the hope was that things will change. There will be a greater community, and people will live as well as possible for as long as possible. Not everyone loves Greta Thunberg. I like her, and I like this quote by her, but the one thing we need more than hope is action. And once we start to act, hope is everywhere. And I believe that the act of loving and the act of choosing joy is what's allowed us to have hope. It's an integral part to why we hope. It is our act. We act with hope. Now, unexpected gifts. So there's a store in Winnipeg, it's called The Unexpected Gift. I found out many years ago that it's owned by a woman who's a cancer survivor, and she opened it because she had found many unexpected gifts in it. And I thought that was crazy. I didn't have cancer. I thought it was totally crazy. How on earth are there unexpected gifts from cancer? And then I was diagnosed with cancer. One of those, like, you eat your words, although I don't think I'd ever shared that with anyone. And if you're lucky, through the pain and the fear and the sadness, you're presented with these opportunities to, see things as gifts more often and to really treasure these opportunities. So for me personally, I've met new friends. I've taken on new roles. And for example, there's some pictures up there, but in the top corner is a mom's group. I'm part of a young moms group on Facebook, young moms with cholangiocarcinoma from across the world. And last year we met in Toronto for a get together. I'm also an ambassador for Cancer Care Manitoba Foundation. That's a middle picture. We have a team of bile duct and breast cancer. Those living with bile duct and breast cancer were called duct boob. I've also been a patient partner and advocate with the C3 since its inception, which really truthfully has bridged a gap in the Canadian landscape. And I am so grateful for the efforts and the strides made. We also have a Manitoba cholangiocarcinoma community that was founded by myself and a patient who we lost recently. We are a local support network. We are an advocacy group, and we do our best to work collaboratively with Cancer Care Manitoba, as well as other initiatives within our province. Our small little group of 4 has raised over $50,000 for cancer research in Manitoba in 2 years. It's pretty impressive. I think, it's this voice. We had 71 people at Light It Green this year. 71 people, government representatives, Cancer Care Manitoba representatives, patients, caregivers, people walking down the street stopped to find out what was going on. And now they know all about cholangiocarcinoma. And the picture in the middle, I think perhaps most heartwarming are that letting my children discover their own unexpected gifts. My daughter and 2 of her best friends, my daughter and her 2 best friends' moms all have cancer. So me and 2 of my friends all have cancer. And when those girls, as they call it, when life gave them lemons, and I think you see my talk today is titled "When Life Gives You Lesions." Life gave these girls lemons. They actually came together with 3 of their other girlfriends, and there's a program in Manitoba called Lemonade Stands for Hope. It's through the foundation. These girls took it to a whole new level. Over 2 years, they've spoken with news media, they've done assemblies, they have made thousands of glasses of lemonade, and just like another philanthropy plug here, but they've raised over $20,000 in 2 years for cancer research. Selling lemonade, yeah. And so the beautiful thing in that is that you see these kids that are otherwise powerless, like they feel so powerless. And as a parent, that's one of the hardest parts of this diagnosis is your child, you sense their feeling of powerlessness. And so this is really empowered kiddos. Both my daughter and my son, they amaze me every day with their capacity to love, their empathy and their resilience. I knew they were a gift, but they're like an extra gift now. So in terms of what lies ahead, I think looking back at the last 3.5 years, I'm super encouraged by the advancements that are taking place. Patients now more than ever, patients and caregivers have access to community, to resources, to advancements in research and care. We have established organizations in Canada like the C3 and CHCC. And their involvement, as I mentioned earlier, is really changing the landscape for patients. We have advocates. I've seen the advocacy space grow significantly. I know that my own advocacy has benefited me, and I hope that I'm benefiting others. It certainly is one of my goals to continue to do that. I'm eager to see what's next. And I'm comforted knowing that as this landscape changes, so too do the outcomes for the people living with cholangiocarcinoma. On a personal level, recent scans show progression of my disease after 15 months of stability. And I actually haven't gotten upset about that. So, I knew it was going to happen. I've kind of been waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I'm so grateful for the time because so many with cholangiocarcinoma don't get that time, that window of stability. I've lost so many friends. That's the risk you take when you grow community. So I'm grateful. And that's not lost on me. It's not lost on me that I've been able to do things that not everyone can do. But I still have hope. My Manitoba team is eager to explore novel therapies and collaborate with Toronto and Houston. I met this week with Dr. Knox again, and I totally fangirled over her. Oh my gosh. There are possibilities that lie ahead. Just yesterday I had a biopsy as part of the Greeley program. I'm in a little bit of pain, but I'm doing okay. Broken arm. I was actually going to start with a disclaimer about my broken arm and my biopsy and my bad haircut, but I opted not to. But here I am. Anyway, sorry. This is the talking problem. But yeah, there is hope. Life's uncertain, right? And life's hard, and it's unfair, and sometimes it really sucks. But it's really beautiful. And if you look around and really take the time to notice, it's filled with love and joy and hope. And it's so worth living. And it's so worth every ounce of effort you put into living. I always joke that I have this finely curated team, which isn't allowed, but I don't care. It's my life. And I like living it, and I want to keep living it. So I'm just going to kick off with some thank yous. I want to thank patients and caregivers who have given me comfort, compassion, and connection. I hope I give you the same. To the advocates, the allies, and the organizations, thank you for your tireless, endless efforts in pursuit of advancements to care and research. Researchers, industry partners, thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. To the healthcare providers, many of you who are in the room today, thank you for taking my phone calls, emails, text messages, random visits, stopping me at conferences to say hello, entertaining all of my wild ideas. And for those of you who I haven't met yet, wink, wink, or there's time, and all you do for our community, thank you so much. And to my family and friends, with their support and love, we have been able to lean into this journey by leaning on them. To my husband, Drew, who has always really encouraged all of my wild and crazy ideas, including living as well as possible for as long as possible with cholangiocarcinoma. And to my kiddos, gosh, I wish you could meet them. They're just the greatest. They're my why. I'm so grateful. And to all of you, everyone, I spoke of gifts earlier, unexpected gifts. And I just want to thank each of you for being one of those gifts. So thank you very much.